Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share my first update on my experience with the Samsung Galaxy Tab S8 Ultra. Now you may be wondering why the studio lights are off. That is because I wanted to demonstrate the backlight capability on the brand new keyboard cover. You can see it works, it's not going to blow you away, but it does exactly what it should, which is illuminate your keys so that you can work with this tablet in the dark. Now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and bring the studio lights on, and let's talk about whether or not this thing is worth it so far. Now, I've only spent a little more than a day with it, and I have to say I'm very impressed. It is essentially, in my opinion, just like the Tab S7 Plus that I own and will likely be trading in, which means it's really, really good. The key difference, though, is that we have a bigger display, 14.6 inches, roughly 3K, 120 hertz. It is a Super AMOLED, which means it is gorgeous. The brightness, some people are complaining that it only gets up to about 400 nits, which means if you're out in the middle of a park and the sun is shining down on you, not going to be the best experience. Plus, you've got that highly reflective display, but in just about every other situation, I think you're going to be happy you went with this. In fact, I would never consider an IPS panel over a Super AMOLED display. I think this whole logic that they're better because you can find them with higher brightness, that is about as weak as it gets. But moving right along, and I'm all for high brightness, don't get me wrong. My IPS gaming displays for my PC are 1000 nit. So I don't want anybody to think that they don't still have a place, but to argue IPS over Super AMOLED, at any rate, back to the tablet. So, starting price point, $1,100 for the entry level that has 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of internal storage. Then you step up to what I purchased. This is not a review unit. We've got 256 gigs of internal storage, 12 gigs of RAM, and then last but not least, if you want to, basically go to town, $1,400 for the half terabyte model, which has 16 gigs of RAM. Now, the reason I went with the 12 gig model with 256 gigs of internal storage is because, first of all, storage is expandable, but you still have to make sure you get enough internal storage, as I jump to DeX, that you can accommodate the number of apps you plan on installing. So be aware of that. I do think getting the entry-level model is perfectly fine, especially if the smartphones you've been using you're comfortable with, and that's really the best measurement. If, like me, you're using the Z Fold 3, that rhymed, I didn't mean to do it, but then you know that 12 gigs is enough for everything you do on that phone/tablet, which means 12 gigs here is also going to be enough. And that's the logic I employed. So it wasn't just about pricing, it was about the performance I'm accustomed to. And if you're coming from something like a Z Flip that only has 8 gigs, then you're probably going to be perfectly happy with that entry-level model. So I could argue it's all about what you're going to do with it, but even that's kind of BS because it's really about what you're accustomed to and if you're satisfied with what you're accustomed to. If you're using a phone from Sammy that has 8 gigs of RAM and you're not happy, get the 12. Do I think you need the 16? No. Will it hurt to have the 16? Absolutely not. I'm all for having more storage capacity, but again, 256 will be enough for my use, and then throwing a 1 terabyte micro SD card in here is going to set you back under $200, so I see that as a much better option, even though it will not be as fast as the internal storage. So moving away from that, one other point, in order to make this 5.5 millimeters thin or thick, however you want to look at it, there is some thermal throttling going on with that Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 CPU. I mention this because that is another reason that I'm not running out to have 16 gigs of RAM. I know I can't really punch this thing up to its full capability just because already, in order to make this form factor, Sammy had to not cut a corner, but essentially we had to sacrifice something. In that case, it's processor performance. Now, will it be noticeable? Not in my experience thus far. Granted, my experience is limited. You're looking at DeX, Samsung's alter ego for Android, basically taking you out of the One UI traditional interface and giving you a desktop PC Chromebook-esque experience, which I think is great. This is also on their phones. For those of you aware of it, you already know what this hotness is all about. For those of you that do not, you can see I'm having to interact with it like it's actually a PC. I'm double clicking, double tapping in order to open things up. And the other nice thing is they're windowed. So, just like a PC, you're going to work with this in the same way. Now, battery life on this machine has been very good so far. I'm looking at least in video rundown tests, getting a little over an hour for over an hour of content. So that's really good. I think about an hour and 20 minutes of video playback got me down 10%. So it looks in line to be an all-day user, at least for me. That's at 50% brightness. You know, if you're going to punch it up to 100%, you're living in a different realm, obviously. So it's a case-by-case basis, but still something I wanted to point out. But this is something I have always admired about DeX. The problem has always been, can we get a bigger screen? And Sammy said, yes, 2022 is your year. If, like me, you've been waiting since 2012, since the Toshiba Excite 13 to see a quality premium portable Android tablet with a large form factor display larger than that 2012 ahead of its time monster, now is that time. And for those of you that will mention the Samsung Galaxy View, there have been a few of you, I get it. I covered the first gen View. It was, I mean, not premium, certainly not portable. It had a built-in handle for a reason. It belonged in a kitchen or maybe on a trailer, I don't know. Cute, a novelty, but nothing like this machine, and certainly did not compete with Samsung's traditional tablet lineup. So let's just keep those separate. If we want to get really technical, you know, Windows has had, I covered a Dell 18-inch all-in-one desktop that you could use as a tablet, completely, you know, wireless. It used Qi charging. I'm not going to split hairs. This is the biggest premium Android, or rather not Android, tablet from any manufacturer that is mainstream. So let's take a look at some video, because after all, the display is gorgeous. As I mentioned, you're talking about 3K, 14.6 inches. I think they got a nice balance of the pixel density to performance, maintaining battery life. And I'll be talking about that notch in a minute, but something I'm going to show you right now with that notch, because those of you who follow my channel know I absolutely hate notches. I mean, is there anything more disgusting in design language than to incorporate a notch? No, there really isn't. So I'm never going to excuse that notch, but you may have already noticed it's not cutting into the display, into the image we're watching. Why is that? It's not cutting into it because we're watching 16:9 content, which is the standard for everything that you watch basically on this planet. Granted, if you're in a movie theater, it's not 16:9, another story, another time. But at home, on your computer, on your television, everything pretty much is 16:9. You will occasionally find something that isn't, but very rarely. And that means that that camera notch right up there at the top center is not cutting into our image. Now, if it did cut into the image, kind of like what Apple does, I would be thoroughly pissed off. And that doesn't mean, again, that I'm in any way, shape, or form excusing what Sammy has done here. You know, Sammy's excuse for this is that basically, in order to make the bezels as thin as possible, this was the trade-off, putting in high-quality cameras. And let me tell you, the cameras are really high quality. Do I think that excuses it? No, but because we have a 16:10 aspect ratio, I'm far less critical about it. It's not pretty looking, but hey, the cameras are in the right place where they should be, top center. So when you're video chatting, things are good, as opposed to the iPad Pro where it's located here, which is ridiculous. That means you're really going to want to use that in portrait mode. I mean, don't even get me started. So a lot to like about this in spite of the notch, and that's coming from me, the hater of notches. Hate's a strong word, but you get the picture. I'll never defend it. I won't here either. I'm just telling you why I can look past it. So no defense at all. But the cameras are really good. I mean, we've got 4 cameras in total, two 12-megapixel shooters, one 13 and one 6, and they all do a great job. So another recognition, I think, from Sammy about looking at Apple's success and saying, well, we need an even bigger tablet, because they still didn't have the largest, right? The Tab S7 over here, plus 12.4 inches, now we're beyond that 12.9 hurdle, which wasn't much of a hurdle. It was just Sammy needing to actually warrant making it, and they have. I mean, this thing has sold out. It's not available in my market, pretty much most others. Directly through Sammy, you're looking at the end of April for some models. Maybe it's even worse now. It could be May. And that tells you a lot about where I think things are going to go with optimization for Android. And that is something really solved by DeX and also in One UI. So for people who are saying, well, you know, it's just blowing up Android apps to the size of the display, it's not optimized. Well, inside of DeX, you can take care of that. It's windowed, as you noticed. And in addition to that, you can also go into One UI and do scaling there. So there are workarounds, but to me, DeX is the ultimate workaround because it's giving you PC-like performance and experience using hardware, again, that's going to give you all-day battery life and incredible convenience and portability. Now, I do think the keyboard cover is a must-have. It's incredibly expensive at $350, but it changes what this device can do. It takes you from just having an incredibly large, dare I say, massive tablet and turns it into an Ultrabook. So 350, ridiculous. Sammy, this is kind of egregious, but this isn't really new. I mean, it's not like it was inexpensive last generation. And of course, anyone who pre-ordered this through Sammy, not through Best Buy, they were able to get this keyboard for free. So that is definitely a plus, kind of the reward for being an early adopter of this brand new device. And basically, it's not the end of the world. Take a listen to the audio, by the way, while I ramble around here. Audio performance is excellent, very similar to the Tab S7 Plus. When people say it blows it away, I feel like they never use the Tab S7 Plus. Give you a better example for audio. Let's go back to just one of, I guess, my videos, so we'll get some actual speech in here. But the performance is just excellent across this entire device. And I'll get to multitasking next. Digest, and today I wanted to share my full review, the digitally digested segment for the HP Spectre 16. Now, I'll start off the review by letting all of you know that this is my favorite 2-in-1 of 2022. Granted, the year is young, but... So, I'm stopping that right now. Bringing the mic back to me, and let's talk about, again, the overall usability inside of DeX. So DeX is excellent. Any sort of accessories you want to pair with it, we're talking about keyboards, mice, external storage, it's a go. And that's one of the really nice things. So you don't have to worry about adaptability, but I do believe the fact that this is sold out is going to lead developers to getting on board with more development for Android. But that shouldn't hold you back because, again, DeX is there to hold your hand. And by hold your hand, I mean let this thing turn into the productivity machine that it truly can be. Now, again, Sammy, taking notes on Apple, large form factor tablet, check. Great cameras, check. And it's no surprise that Sammy can do that. They're one of the largest mobile device manufacturers in the world. And as I stated, these cameras really are excellent. And again, they remind PC manufacturers, you've got to keep stepping up your game. And we've seen some of that. A lot of the laptops I'm reviewing now have 1080p webcams, and they are remarkably better than previous generations. They're still not up to snuff necessarily with what Sammy has stuffed into this incredibly expensive tablet. Now, in terms of utilizing the large form factor, let's go ahead and jump back to tablet mode. I mean, I could show you more inside of DeX, but I want to save that for a DeX dedicated video. And in the regular tablet mode, which of course, if you want to just use this as a tablet, go ahead and pull the keyboard off and just use it as such, which is really easy to do. You have, again, the largest tablet on the market and also one of the most powerful, and it's really easy to multitask with this. So unlike a device like, let's say, my Z Fold 3, where of course I can multitask, there's no question, I won't want to go beyond 2 windows because there's just not that much screen real estate, right? Well, here, that's not the case. I accidentally did that, excuse me. Just drag and drop like you would with any previous One UI experience, and you've got it. And, you can do whatever you want here. If you want to, again, open up an additional application, you can. You notice it would not let me open up another instance of YouTube. This is one of the areas where, Microsoft's Duo has a bit of an edge, but we can do something else. So let's say I'll pop a calculator in there. And this can be customized. There are workarounds. So now I've got the calculator. I've got YouTube on one side, so we can go ahead and, jump into a video at the same time, throw up some news. You might throw up. It really depends. And you can still use the calculator. Of course, you can resize, dump that off the display. Now I'm competing with the audio, and you're able to browse, do 2 things at once, but you actually have enough screen real estate to do 2 things at once, which... all of the bragging about multitasking where you don't have the real estate to do it is stupid, frankly. Now, the notch is cutting in, but it's not cutting into actual anything that's running, that's being used. I mean, in part just because we've got the framing of the Android taskbar up there, so it takes care of that. But overall, again, I think it's a matter of getting accustomed to that thing. It's kind of staring me in the face right now, especially since it's got 2 lenses. I'm not trying to freak anybody out here, but I think it's something that I'm going to get over in spite of the fact that Again, I cannot stand the notch. It's staring at me. But all of that aside, you've got great performance here. The 120 hertz display is excellent. Multitasking is excellent. Let's talk about the S Pen. So, as you may or may not know, this keyboard cover, just like the previous generation, stores your S Pen right there, charges it up. There are the other two cameras. And the S Pen experience is excellent. So, I mean, outside of Apple, I think the other best experience is with this guy right here. And that's because Sammy has been working on this for so long, refining it, even giving us a texture experience so that it feels like we are actually working with paper, which is not something I can say for the competition. You know, as much as Apple is really lauded as the best in the biz, they don't give you that feeling of writing on paper. And there's something to be said for that. Now, this is not the artist's review. This is an incredibly awkward capacity that I'm even using this in, but I still wanted to just do a very quick demo. Sorry for all the glare, and also the fact that I'm in the dark mode is another issue with this. I could change that, but that's the other thing. This comes with the pen, as you probably already know, but if you don't, now you do. And you can use that as a mouse for all intents and purposes, having a stylus, which I think is a great thing. I think that most users will use this with this because now we finally have what I would call a canvas. Sorry, Vio, you got to relaunch that product. But we've got a 14.6-inch display. Now, there's nothing wrong with the 12.4 over there, but certainly not as large, not as useful, I think, for note-taking for students and artists alike. And I will get an artist perspective. I am not that artist. Anyone who follows the channel knows my other half is. She will be giving us the inking demo as well as a lot of feedback about the experience. But she's already played with the S Pen here and the experience with the larger display. And pretty much the feedback I got at this point was that it's very similar to what we've experienced with the Tab S7 Plus, and it's just, of course, a better experience because now we have a bigger display, and that's really what you would expect. Sammy's note-taking app, sorry about that, is excellent. Nothing wrong with it. I mean, these features have been around for just about ever. Of course, creating a note, Smart Select, Screen Write, live messages, AR Doodle, a little bit newer. The translating, Pen Up is, I'm not going to even get into, but everything works as it should. And it's just a great addition to what is already, in my opinion, one of the most complete tablets, because unlike Apple's tablet, the iPad Pro, this really does, through DeX, become an Ultrabook. Now, that's not for everyone. There are a lot of people that just for the Apple Pencil will go with Apple's product, and that's one of the reasons. You know, you want to put that on like it's the Apple Pencil, and I've seen so many people doing it. I probably did it in the wrong orientation, right? No, it's just the angle. It's my positioning, excuse me. But I'm not the person trying to emulate anything Apple. If you follow my channel, you know that if there's an Apple logo on it, it's probably a fruit I don't want to eat. So with that out of the way, I mean, this overall experience, especially with the pen coming included, I feel like for Apple users, this is not going to be an expensive foray. They're going to see this as being so value-oriented compared to, and I'm not saying that they're going to think it's inexpensive, but to not have to buy the pen and the keyboard was included for free, holy crap, it sounds like you won the Apple lottery, right? Now, to me, the keyboard is incredibly expensive, but over time, the price of this device will go down, and they'll keep the price of the keyboard probably exactly the same, but it will offset, if you see what I'm saying. So, those of you waiting for the reviews, I totally get it. This thing is really expensive. It's the most expensive Android tablet ever made. It's also the largest and, in my opinion, the most competent. So, quick recap of what at least I've covered with all of you today. We've got solid battery life. We have great capability with DeX of turning this into a PC experience using that Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, the 12 gigs of RAM, or 8 or 16, and that 256 gigs of internal storage. Easy to expand. Great audio performance. The keyboard overall is solid. It's not amazing, but for a tablet, I think it's damn near amazing. The multitasking capability, no problems at all. And granted, I have to spend more time with it. I think that I can't point any of you in the direction of getting the Tab S8 Plus, only because I was a Tab 7 Plus user, which meant that I was waiting for something larger. Now, if you're not waiting for something larger, the Tab S8 Plus is your best bet, of course. It's a little bit less expensive. But to me, the novelty of tablets and having that screen real estate in such a light form factor, again, 1.6 pounds for this 14.6-inch Butte, is that you have something that really can go anywhere, even in this size. So anyone who's saying, the Tab S8 Plus is the sweet spot, well, I don't think from a pricing perspective it is. And I feel like those people are the same people who, again, probably never picked up or used the Tab S7 Plus, because it's almost exactly the same product. You want to talk about a one for one? I mean, yes, we got new internals, the new processor, you got new cameras. Don't get me wrong, that's all nice, but the display, the form factor, even the keyboard stayed the same. If you didn't know that, this is the only new keyboard that they launched. With the Tab S8 Plus, did not get a new keyboard, folks. It has the exact same keyboard from the Tab S7 Plus. So I will not be personally recommending the Tab S8 Plus to anyone, especially over this device. This is where it's at, in my opinion. If you're going to spend fresh money on a tablet in 2022, do it right. That is, unless you absolutely hate the form factor, but get the new offering that, in my opinion, is the game changer. Both from the S Pen element of having more screen real estate, multitasking, having more screen real estate, and then just general usability from a productivity standpoint. If you want to get work done on this thing, you have something finally with a display large enough to compete with a 15-inch computer, an actual laptop. That can't be said for any other tablet on the market, and that's what Samsung has gotten right here above and beyond. So I really like everything they've done. I don't have any complaints. Opening up multiple tabs is not going to be an issue, and having that 120 hertz display is definitely nice. It really depends on what you plan on doing. If you absolutely must have a smaller display, go ahead and get it. I personally don't see a reason to disregard what is really new here, which is this screen real estate. Having this, in my opinion, is the new dynamic product, whereas getting the Tab S8 Plus is like just getting a revamped, spec bump on the Tab S7 Plus, which is kind of a bore fest. I don't see anything exciting about that. This is where it's at. And quite frankly, if the Tab S8 Plus was the only thing they had launched, I wouldn't be buying one. I'd be reviewing it and losing it. Here, there was a reason for me to actually be interested in something new, because it's going to give me a new experience. Last but not least, take a quick look at those cameras. And you're really taking a look at my camera. What's up? And nothing wrong with that, right? The cameras are pretty dynamic. They're all, both front and back are capable of 4K at 60 frames. No surprise there. And, they're pretty smart in terms of their capability to follow you. Nothing crazy, but certainly a nice spec bump from previous generations. So I like what Sammy has done here, if that wasn't already clear. Everything is basically what it should be. I can't really see anything negative about this yet. I'm going to spend more time with it. We're going to find out if there is something negative. You can rest assured about that. The pen charges up. You're always good to go as long as you keep it docked. And this keyboard cover seems like they did it right, even better than the previous generation, which says a lot, because the previous generation was definitely the best they had ever made. And kudos to Sammy on doing what, I had hoped for years, pretty strong magnet, right? I had hoped for years Microsoft was going to do. And you know what, if Microsoft's biggest possible jump in their actual size of the device, as I separate this, was to bump us up to 13 inches with their latest Surface Pro, they're going to have to do some more work, because this is where it's at. Give us tablets in a larger form factor. And just a quick run around the body again. The Pogo port for accessories like the keyboard dock right there at the bottom. Right side, your Type-C charging port. Still going to take a decent while to charge this baby with that 11,200 milliamp hour battery. Part of the quad firing speakers right there. Come around to the top of the device, your SIM card slot. That is also where you will be putting in your micro SD card. That is all. This is a Wi-Fi only version. Some microphone pinholes, your volume rocker and power button, and then on the other side, more speakers, and of course more microphone, well, one microphone, and then the fingerprint scanner, which is not something I really use. Facial unlock on here does a great job. One of you mentioned it. You're dead on the money. And the new cameras really pay off. But there is a fingerprint scanner right here under the display, which is not something that I care about, but it's a big deal. Not many devices have under display fingerprint scanners. It's been done before, don't get me wrong, but it does work. It's just not something I personally care about. But overall, great piece of hardware. Kudos to Sammy. This was a first update. I know it was long, but I promise this tablet is worth it. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe and please stay safe. Later.